Day again, dear grade 5 learners and also grade 5 teachers. This is our English 5 week 2, quarter English 5 Matatag curriculum or the revised K to 12 curriculum, quarter 1 week 2. Now this is from days 1 to 5. Brought to you by English with Jerry Java. For our objectives for this week is this is about our subject matter. Our content is all about recognizing sound devices and figures of speech. Okay, one, define the following sound devices and figures of speech used in literary text such as onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance and consonants, simile, metaphor and personification. Two, identify onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, consonants, similes, metaphors, and personifications used in a selection. This selection can be like in a story, in a poem, in a song, or in just expressions. We have an activity. I'll be showing or flashing different pictures of animals or even humans and machines or gadgets or tools, equipment, that anything, just anything that make sound. Now your mission, your task is to identify and give that specific sound. Okay, we have here, what's the sound of a snake? A snake says s, s, s. A cow says moo, moo. A clock says tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. A frog says cook, cook, cook. A goat says meh, meh, meh. A doorbell says ding dong, ding dong. A bird says tweet, tweet, tweet. Pigs says oink, oink, oink. A man or a person sleeping says zzz, zzz. A rooster says tiktilaok, tiktilaok. If it's in Philippines, of course. I believe in the US of A, they have another sound for that. Just like the frog, they say rabbit, rabbit. Oh, we have here a bee says bzz, bzz. Then a heartbeat says tug tug, tug tug, tug tug. Now answer this. What would the world look or feel like if there are no sounds? The world would be silent, quiet, and, in a bad sense, boring, I believe. Why do you think sounds are important? Or do you think sounds are important? Of course. But why are they important? Because they make us able to hear. They are part of our senses. What are other sounds coming from nature and machine do you know? Could you share some? Maybe the sound of an alarm like ring, ring, the sound of a gun. It says bang, bang, right? Boom, splash, all those. Now talking of sounds, this will be our lesson. The sounds we hear from nature and man-made things or artificial things can also be read in different pieces of literature. These are called onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. What is an onomatopoeia? It's when we humans we make up a word from sounds that we hear from nature, from our surroundings. Authors or writers often use creative or imaginative techniques to make their writing come alive. One powerful way they do this is by appealing to our five senses. Our five senses include the sense of sight, the sense of sound, smell, taste, and touch. This helps readers imagine or picture out scenes more vividly, more lively, and feel more connected or related to the story or poem. This technique is called sensory language or imagery. Now I'll be showing some tongue twisters. Different tongue twister scenes will be flashed on screen. Then you are going to read this maybe from fast, faster, fastest. Maybe 3 times. Without, try as much as possible not to commit or not to make mistakes. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. How can a clam cram in a clean cream can? How can a clam cram in a clean cream can? How can a clam cram in a clean cream can? Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't very fuzzy, was he? Betty Butter bought some butter, but she said this butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. So she bought some better butter, better than the bitter butter, and it made her batter better. Now, what did you notice about the tongue twister pieces? Maybe some sounds are repeated. Now, two, what similarities or commonalities can you pinpoint, can you detect as regards the vowel and consonant sounds in each tongue twister? The vowel and consonant sounds, most of which have been repeated from word to word. Our lesson is about sound devices and figures of speech. What is a figure of speech? A figure of speech is when we use words in a special way. Another, we call figures of speech as a special language, the use of flowery words to make our language more interesting, not boring, or to create a certain effect. Figures of speech make language more colorful and engaging. It is like adding a special touch to what we say or write to make it more creative and fun, thus creating an impact. We can find figures of speech not just in stories and poems, but also in greeting cards, advertisements, newspaper headlines or titles, and even in the way people talk about sports, music, and other topics they are passionate about, even in vlogs, in social media content, in TikTok, in podcasts. Now, Litcharts has provided a clear way on defining the commonest figures of speech. A metaphor. This is one example. The first example is a metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that makes a comparison between two unrelated, two different, two unlikely things by stating that one thing is another thing, even though this is not literally true. So metaphor is like simile, but it is because it because it does not use the words as or like, but still it compares two different things or two different people. Then it's you, the reader or listener, who's going to think what could be the commonality or the similarity of these two things, because it's not said there. You have to think. Metaphors are tropes because their effect relies or depends not on the mechanics of the sentence, but rather on the association created by the use of the phrase cats and dogs in a non-literal or figurative manner. Like when you say, it's raining cats and dogs. Here, for example, if someone says, it's raining cats and dogs, this obviously does not literally mean what it says. It doesn't say that cats and dogs are really falling from the sky. It is a metaphor that makes a comparison, what is being compared, between the weight of the cats and dogs and how heavy the rain is. So when we say it's raining cats and dogs, it actually means it's raining very hard. Maybe we are comparing the weight or the size of the droplets. Now let's have a simile. A simile, like a metaphor also, because it compares two different, two unlikely, two unrelated things. However, with simile, it's a bit simpler or easier to think because the common quality or common characteristic is really stated there explicitly in the sentence or expression. However, instead of stating that one thing is another thing, as in metaphor, a simile states that one thing is like another thing. How you would know that it is a simile because of the words as or like. Now, when we say to stick with cats and dogs, an example of a simile would be to say they fought like cats and dogs. So they fought like, we are comparing how maybe your sisters are fighting. They are fighting like they are cats and dogs. Maybe they are they are really fighting like animals. Maybe they are very wild. We have a poem here. Read the poem and answer the question that follow. Palace by Dorothy Vanna Johnson. A seashell is a palace where many echoes dwell, and when I listen to them, I know them quite well. They are like the ocean's roar, where the seashells buried deep learn why the sea is always salty, and spooky shadows creep. One, what is described in the poem? What's described in the poem are the seashells. To where do the seashells learn that the sea is salty? I believe, going back to the poem, it's where they learned where they were buried. Little Boy Lindo by Maria Eva S. Eden. Little boy Lindo loves to sit by the window to watch the clouds that are white as cottons, floating like feathers that go high and low. Oh, how happy little boy Lindo seeing them in tons. Night and day, little boy Lindo dreams about him swiftly flying like a kite up above, with his memory that is a camera on the stream that captures every moment one can ever have. Little boy Lindo's mind is a wanderer that travels far beyond those cottony clouds. It is like a time machine that quickly remembers God's wondrous creations. All of us must be proud. To what object does Limbo compare himself? I believe Lindo compared himself to a cotton, to a kite, to a camera. How are the clouds described in the poem? Clouds are like, or like cottons. This time you're going to answer this by writing simile or metaphor. Again, for simile, it has to have the words, you compare using the words as or like. For metaphor, you compare, there is no use of words such as or like. 1. The sky was the color of the calm Pacific thousands of miles from land. That is metaphor. 2. I am as hungry as a bear recently awakened from hibernation. You have the word as, that is simile. 3. She was a kite floating above the confusion around her. There's no use of as or like. It says there she was a kite. So that's metaphor. 4. Like a silent thief, the dog crept into the kitchen. You have the word like, that's simile. 5. The dark, cold, and silent room was a tomb. That's a metaphor. 6. My noisy sister was like a buzzing fly. That's simile. 7. My thoughts fluttered from subject to subject like a butterfly visiting flowers in a field. It has the word like. That's simile. 8. Dad is mad because my room is a pig pen during the lockdown. Is a pig pen. It has no like or as. That's a metaphor. 9. To stay inside the house for a month is like being alone in the dark. That is simile. And 10. The food prepared by my mother during the enhanced community quarantine tastes like heaven to me. That is simile. Now let's have quarter 1, week 2, day 2. This is a continuation still about sound devices and figures of speech. We are done with simile and metaphor, but we'd have to review. As our review, that just means you are going to compare simile versus metaphor. For simile, okay, both simile and metaphor are actually figures of speech that compare two different things. Only that simile uses as or like, then metaphor it does not use as or like. We have here another phrase. Learning is going to take longer than it took to build the Great Wall of China. Why? Yeah, right. It is some kind of exaggeration. But today you are going to learn something new like no other day. Why do we say that it was an exaggeration? Because learning couldn't be any longer than building the walls of the Great Wall of China. I believe uh, the Chinese took them like hundreds of years to build that Great Wall of China. Learning something new today is not that long, not that hard. And that exactly is one example of hyperbole. Hyperbole is an intentional exaggeration over the top of the truth used to emphasize the importance or highlight the importance of something or to create a comic effect, joke or laughter effect. An example of a hyperbole is to say that a backpack weighs a ton. Like when you say my backpack, my bag weighs a ton, when it's actually just maybe 1 2 kilograms. But you might say that because you are exaggerating, you say it weighs a ton. Do you know how much kilo a ton, 1 ton is? It's actually 1,000 kilograms. So your backpack couldn't weigh 1,000 kilos. So that's OA. That's an exaggeration. That's hyperbole. Yeah, no backpack literally weighs a ton. But what's the purpose of saying that it weighs a ton? Because you believe that to show that it's really so heavy. Once again, this is a trope. Hyperbole is a trope because its effect comes from understanding that the words mean something different from what they literally say. It's raining here now while I'm recording. It's raining cats and dogs, our metaphor. Example of hyperbole, I have been searching your name all over the universe. So you couldn't really tour around the universe just to find one name. So that's an exaggeration. Two, I cannot live without seeing my crush daily. So you think you'd really die? Three, she told you not to touch her phone for 1,000 times. Maybe she actually just said twice or thrice, but to mean that she keeps on telling you. So that's an exaggeration. That's a hyperbole. For we are really hungry. We can eat all the food in the restaurant, no matter how hungry you are. Believe me, you can't eat all the food in a bar, in a restaurant, in a cafe. But that just means to emphasize that you really are so hungry. You're so hungry you could eat a cow or an entire horse. You can swallow a horse. Now let's move on to alliteration. Alliteration is a sound device. In alliteration, the same sound repeats in a group of words or neighboring words or a series of words, such as the sound b in this expression or sentence. Bob brought the box of bricks to the basement. It's the initial consonant sound. Initial consonant sound or repeated opening, starting, beginning sound of b, like the b in Bob brought, box bricks. So it's alliteration. It's the repetition of initial consonant sound. Okay, we can usually use and or see or read alliterations in most of these tongue twisters. Tongue twisters. Example, the fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, and the furrow followed free. We were the first to ever burst into the silent sea. So we have there the sound of in fair and foam flew. Furrow followed free. That one, that's the sound. The initial consonant sound is the sound of. Then also breeze blew, the initial consonant sound is b. Then we have silent c. The initial consonant sound is the sound s. We all call this examples of alliteration. We have here an example in a poem excerpt, or we took a part or excerpt from a poem. As I walked out one evening by W.H. Auden. I love you, dear, I love you, till China and Africa meet, and the river jumps over the mountain, and the salmon sing in the street. There are, of course, examples here, which can never be true. They are examples of hyperbole. Example, what language, what figurative language was used in the poem? When will China and Africa meet? How can a river jump over a mountain? And when will a salmon, a fish, be intelligent or talented enough to sing or evolved enough to walk the streets? Now, all those are examples of hyperbole. Those will never ever happen. Those are all exaggerations. But what's the purpose of those? Hyperbole. To show, to highlight, or to emphasize how much that person or the writer loves somebody. To show the strength of his love. Now here, this is very easy. This is a very easy activity. Just write the letter, the sound that is being repeated, the initial consonant sound that is repeated. One, Wilma whimpered at the winter weather. It's the sound W. Two, making muffins, Mark made a mess. It's the initial consonant sound M. 3. Greg's goat got into the grain. It's the initial consonant sound G. 4. Becky bet Ben would beat Buster. It's the sound B. 5. Deirdre's dolls are just darling. It's the initial consonant sound D. 6. Too many treats are terrible for your teeth. What's repeated is the initial consonant sound T. 7. Sam always saves his money. It's the sound S. 8. Hank's heavy horse heaved forward. It's the sound 9. Frank fled into the forest. It's the sound 10. Last number. It really rained in Rochester last night. It's the initial consonant sound R. What could the meaning be of these following hyperbole? When you say, I love you to the moon and back, that just means you love someone so much that you would go anywhere for them. A turtle moves faster than this car. That just means that this car moves slowly. The school cafeteria was a jungle. It just means that the school canteen or the school cafe was maybe so crowded, so messy, so topsy-turvy, so dirty. It's been ages since I had ice cream. That just means that it was a long time since you had eaten ice cream. I thought my commute would never end. That just means that your commute, you're going to and from your home to school or to your office or to somewhere else, it took you so long. Here's another activity. Fill in the gaps with the words from the box like whistling, bounced, helped, shiny, sounds, put, mind, bumped, noisy, and purple. Peter Parker blank is painting on the wall. The boy blank the ball in the backyard. Helen happily blank her housemaid with the housework. Most men don't blank making their man cave tidy. The wind was blank through the holes in the walls. This is very easy because this is just about alliteration. You just think of that sound, just think of the initial consonant sound from those words. Peter Parker, maybe put or place his painting on the what's the word from that previous slide, it has to just look for the word that starts with the sound P. The number 2, the boy blanked the ball in the backyard. Bounced the ball in the backyard. Helen happily helped. The sound. Most men don't mind making their man cave tidy. The wind was whistling through the holes in the walls. The sound W. English 5, quarter 1, week 2, day 3. Still about figures of speech and sound devices. Review. Add a word from the word box to complete the alliteration sentence. This is just like our previous activity. Just look for the word that has the same initial consonant sound as with the rest of the words here in these sentences. 1. Tony lost 2. Which word from those box from the box has the same initial consonant sound with t t t? Tony lost 2 teeth. That's correct. 2. Edward eats edible eggs. Correct. 3. Mikey makes many muddy piles. 4. Hannah has a hyper hyena. Dominic digs deep ditches. Read the following short poem titled Running Water by Lee Emmett. Pick out words from the poem that exemplify or that is an example of onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, and consonants. Write your answers inside the boxes. Water plops into pond, splish, splash downhill. Warbling magpies in tree, trilling melodic thrill. Whoosh passing breeze, flags flutter and flap. Frog croaks, bird whistles, babbling bubbles from tap. So you have there onomatopoeia, you have whoosh. Whoosh is an onomatopoeia. Then you have croaks of the frog croaks. That is an onomatopoeia. Whistle, that's an onomatopoeia. Babbling, okay. Then you have examples of alliteration. You have splish, splash. By the way, splash, the word splash is also an onomatopoeia. Splish, splash, alliteration. Then you have tree trilling, that, and then, yeah, tree trilling, that's alliteration. Flags flutter and flap, so also the frog, that's an example of alliteration. Bird babbling bubbles, that's alliteration. For assonance, it has to do with the vowel, middle vowel sounds. Consonants, it is just like alliteration, only that the consonant sound is repeated at the last, final part. But the assonance is for vowel, middle vowel sounds. Okay, you are going to match the figures of speech in column A with their corresponding descriptions in column B. Write the capital letter, the big letter of the correct answer in the blank provided. Let's do a review and maybe a pre-test. In column A, you have their alliteration, hyperbole, simile, personification, metaphor, assonance, consonance, and onomatopoeia. In column B, you have there, it compares two different things using the words like or as. B, it is a figure of speech that directly refers to one thing by mentioning another to suggest they are alike. For instance, time is a thief. C, it attributes human characteristics to non-human things. D, it involves extreme exaggeration. For emphasis, E, it is a figure of speech in which the sound of a word imitates or copies or follows its meaning. F, it is the repetition of initial consonant sounds. G, it is the repetition of vowel sounds. H, it is a repetition of consonant sounds, especially at the end, final. So let's check now. Let's answer. Alliteration. What is alliteration? It's the repetition of initial consonant sounds. Like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So that one that we can usually see in tongue twisters. That's letter F. Hyperbole, from the word hyper, it's over the top, it's exaggeration. That is letter D. Simile. What is simile? Letter number 3. That is with the use of as or like. Letter A. For personification, when you personify things or creatures which are not people. So that is when we give human-like qualities or characteristics. That's letter C. 5. Metaphor. This is like simile, but without the use of as or like. That is letter B. Like time is a thief. Letter B. 6. Assonance. Assonance, like I said, is the repetition of middle or internal vowel sounds. Vowel sounds. Letter G. Consonants. Number 7. Consonants. It's the repetition of consonant sounds, especially at the final or at the end part, like stroke of luck, the sound of k, k, k at the end. Letter H. And lastly, onomatopoeia. Number 8, onomatopoeia is when we humans copy the sounds from nature. That's letter E. It is a figure of speech in which the sound of a word imitates its meaning. For instance, buzz or clang. Yeah, that's letter E. Now let's talk more about assonance. Assonance is a scheme or pattern in which vowel sounds repeat in nearby words or neighboring words, such as the sound of E in the following proverb. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you have a long E, long hard E in the middle. So that's assonance. Like alliteration, assonance uses repeated sounds. So it's a sound device to create a musical effect in which words echo one another. It is a scheme or pattern because this effect is achieved through repetition of words with certain sounds to ring a bell, not by playing with the meaning of words. Consonants, on the other hand, this is just like alliteration, only that alliteration, it is a repetition of initial, beginning, opening, starting sound, consonant sound. Whereas consonants, it's a repetition of final or ending consonant sound. An example of consonants is traffic figures on July 4th to be tough. It's the, yeah, final sound. I believe that's a wrong example. Okay. Usually consonants in a poem, we can usually uh, the best example for consonants in a poem is the use of rhyming words, words that rhyme, like ing, like that, or also in some tongue twisters. But I believe in this example there is no consonants here. Consonants should be repetition of final sounds, most especially. Like when you say, I scream because Kim bought me ice cream. Ice cream, or I scream. So the I scream like when you shouted, scream, the and then came, the and came, and then they cream, the and cream. So that's example. Consonants occurs when sounds, not letters, repeat. Okay. For this activity, you are going to tell whether the sentence uses alliteration. These are sound devices. Alliteration, assonance, or consonants. Write only the number of your answer in the box. So for here, we're going to have this. Jackia jumped in the jar of jelly. That's initial consonant sound of J, so that's alliteration. Number two, the snow in the rose garden groaned. So you have there the O in snow, the O in rose, and the O in groaned. That's repetition of middle vowel sounds, so that's assonance. Next, the grass grew green in the graveyard. The repetition of the sound G or the GR. So that's initial consonant sound, that is alliteration. Try to light the fire. Try to light the fire. So you have there the sound of I. I in try, I in light, and I in fire. So that's middle vowel sound. So that's assonance. 5. You could paddle through the spittle in the bottle. So you have there the sound of what sound? So that's, I believe you could have, there are many answers there. If you focus on u in you, u in could, and u in through, so you could have assonance, middle vowel sound, and you could also say the final consonant sound. So consonants for uh, spittle, battle, and the paddle. So paddle, the l, the sound of l, paddle, spittle, and battle. So that's consonants. Number 6, the frog frolicked frivolously on the forest floor. The sound of f found in the initial first part of the word, and it's a consonant sound. So that is alliteration. Hear the mellow wedding bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells. So you have there the in mellow, in wedding, and in bells. And is a vowel sound, so that is assonance. Number 8, he stuns you by degrees. He stuns you by degrees. So you can have E in he and E in degrees. So the hard E vowels, that's assonance. Or you can also have consonants, the sound of S in stuns and the sound of S in degrees. So that's consonants. 9, little skinny shoulder blades sticking through your clothes. What could that be? You have little, skinny. So you have the sound of E in little, E in skinny, sticking, E in sticking. So you can have assonance, the sound of E. Next, 10, as players at the keys. As players at the keys. So you have so consonants, consonants. Read the poem below and circle each case of assonance or consonants. Hint, read the poem out loud so you can really hear the sound of the words. So you are going to circle if each case of assonance or consonants. So you can have assonance again. Let's review. Assonance, middle vowel sounds. Consonants, usually at the final or ending consonant sound. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe, that's one of my most favorite, my favorite writers of poets. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping. So you can have there, midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. So you have there weak and weary. So the long hard E, that's vowel, so that's assonance. Over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping. Suddenly there came a tapping. So you have the napping, tapping. So ah. So you can have ah. So that's ah in napping, ah in tapping. So that's assonance. Or you can also have the ng, the consonant sound ng, and the ending, the rhyming, napping, ing. So that's consonants. As of someone gently rapping, the same with tapping and rapping. Rapping at my chamber door. Tis some visitor. So you have door and visitor consonants. I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. So door, visitor, more. So that's consonants. What is the purpose of using repetition in poetry or songs? For emphasis. What figure of speech is used in the sentence? The classroom was a zoo during recess. So you compare a zoo and your classroom. And it did not use the word as or like. What two things are being compared? You have classroom and zoo. But it doesn't say there what could be the commonality or similarity between a classroom and a zoo during recess. So that is metaphor, correct. Think of five examples each of the sound devices in poetry. And almost there, we're on day 4 of week 2, quarter 1, English 5, Matatag. So we are going to think what sound device and what sound is being repeated. So you're going to identify, you're going to do two things, right? Whether that's assonance, alliteration, we are now reviewing, or consonants, alliteration, or assonance, and what sound is being repeated. One, from the molten golden notes. So you have the sound O. So that's assonance. Her finger hungered for a ring. Finger hungered for a ring. So that could be. So you can have finger. So the E in finger and the E in ring. So that's assonance. Cupid laid by his brand. So you have the sound of D in Cupid, the sound of D in laid, and the sound of D in brand. So that's consonants. How they clang and clash. So you have a in clang and a in clash. So that's assonance. And roar, what a horror they outpour. So the sound of r in roar, r in horror, the final r. So that's consonants. Whose woods these are, I think I know. So you have the whose woods these are, I think I know. The u in whose, the u in woods. So that's assonance. He saw the cost and hold off. So you have the sound of aw in saw, aw in cost, and aw in hold, and aw in off. So that is assonance. Gail tapped a finger on the sack of books in her lap. So you have a in tapped, a in sack, and a in lap. So that is assonance. I sipped the rim with palatable lip. That is a in sipped, a in rim, and a in lip. That's assonance. A gallant knight in sunshine and in shadow. So you have in gallant and in night. So that is consonants. And also you can also have sunshine and shadow. So the sound of s is also repeated. So that could be alliteration. Okay, let's guess the figurative language. You have a configuration clue there, the number of boxes that will give you a hint or a clue as to how many letters that figure of speech has. So you have my eyes glow to look at the colorful butterfly graciously sips all the flower's sweet nectars and flies into nothingness afterwards. So that is, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What could that be? That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My eyes glow to look at the colorful butterfly graciously sips all the. I guess that is six. One. How many boxes is that? 1, 2, 3. I guess that is. There is no as or like, so that could not be simile. What is that? My eyes glow to look at the colorful butterfly graciously sips all the flower's sweet nectars and flies into nothingness afterwards. So that could be, yeah, I believe that could be hyperbole. Hyperbole. Because your eyes will glow. Oh, I'm dirty, Dan, the world's dirtiest man. I never have taken a shower. I can't see my shirt. It's so covered with dirt. And my ears have enough to grow flowers. So you can have the dirty Dan. So that's alliteration. Then you have shirt all covered with dirt. That could be the sound of that could be consonants, or the e in shirt and the e in dirt. That could be uh, could have assonance. So this could also be the world's dirtiest man. Would you believe that a man I never have taken a shower? So this could be a hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. 3. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So you have the sound of E, so that could be assonance. Then you have there beside the lake, what did you see? A crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Daffodils are flowers. Then it says here fluttering and dancing. Do daffodils, the flowers, really dance? So this is personification. We are giving inanimate objects human-like qualities. So that is personification. Okay. Now, this leads us to our topic about personification, another figure of speech, in which non-human things, what are examples of non-human things? What are non-human things? These are objects, things, any stuff are described, or even animals, as having human attributes or human qualities. As in the sentence, the rain poured down on the wedding guests, indifferent to their plans. So the rain could not be indifferent. The rain could not have feelings. It doesn't care. So that's personification. Describing the rain as indifferent is an example of personification because rain can't be indifferent. They cannot have feeling, nor can it feel anything or any other human emotion. However, saying that the rain feels indifferent poetically emphasizes or means that it was so cruel, it's it is out of timing of the rain. No one wishes, no one hopes, no one expects a rain on your wedding day. Personification can help writers to create more vivid descriptions, to make readers see the world in new ways or creative, imaginative ways, and to more powerfully capture the human experience of the world, since people really do often interpret the non-human entities of the world as having human traits. Now let's have onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia, this is still about sounds. It is a figure of speech in which words evoke the actual sound of the thing they refer to or describe. Like examples are the boom of a firework or an explosion, exploding, the tick-tock of a clock, and the ding-dong of a doorbell are all examples of onomatopoeia. Another is clap, click of a camera, splash, buzz, crack, beep, those. Note that these are just the most commonly used figures of speech in literature, and there are a lot more. These figures of speech help the writers to provide or to give a deeper meaning into their poetry and create a beauty in the writing process, because without these figures of speech, no flowery words in your poem or in your song, I think it would be very boring. Now let's read a short poem, The Familiar Sounds in Our Home by Rocky James G. Sarasua. Before I sleep at night, my mama would shh, shh, shh. While asleep, they hear me zzz, zzz, zzz. When I wake up, the white rooster will crow, tick-tilock, tick-tilock, tick-tilock. Our cows would moo, moo, moo. Our ducks would quack, quack, quack. The minute Mayas will tweet, 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 tweet. Our pet brownie will bark, arf, arf, arf. These are the sounds that I listen to every morning. For the breakfast, my mama would heat up a kettle for the coffee. The whistling sound signals that the water is boiling hot as the sun. The crunchy cereals I bite munch, the excited egg in the pan sizzles, and a burp 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 means that I'm full. In silence, the sad shiny silver clock sounds tick tock tick tock tick tock. Mama's vivacious vacuum cleaner thuds, woo woo. The fabulous flower garden has buzzes from the bees. The birds chirp in the distant trees. When the sun sets, my energy resets. It's time to rest like a king. When the moon appears lively and sweet, I am all ears for the stories my mama will tell for me to feel very well. And before I sleep at night, my mama would shh, shh, shh. While asleep, they hear me zzz, zzz, zzz. One, as described in the poem, what sounds does a poet hear every morning? There were many sounds, right? Like sh, 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 zzz. What else? The tick tock of a clock, anything, the kettle, the sound whistling, the sound of the rooster. How does the poet describe the sounds of the rooster and the farm animals in the poem? Like that's what I said. The tiktilaok, the quack 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 of the ducks, the dogs, arf arf arf. What does the whistling sound in the poem signify? The whistling sound in the poem signify the sound of the kettle. Describe the breakfast scene mentioned in the poem. What sounds are associated with breakfast? It has the sounds, of course, the whistling sounds of the kettle. What else? What does the poet mean by the sad, shiny silver clock? Sounds tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Why, why is a clock described as sad, shiny silver? So the clock is usually most clocks, all clocks are shiny and it's silver. But why is it sad? Because maybe its job is very boring. It's routinary. It has no other job maybe. Or maybe the clock is sad for you. How is a vacuum cleaner described in the poem? What sound does it make? Does the woo because it absorbs all the dirt. What sounds can be heard in the fabulous flower garden according to the poem? What are in the garden? Of course, the sounds of those maybe animals, the bees. What natural sounds are mentioned in the last stanza of the poem? As I could remember, in the last stanza of the poem, you have the natural sounds, such as you sleeping, so you have the zzz, right? Or the sound of your mama. Shh, shh, shh. How does the poet describe the transition from day to night in the poem? So the transition from the day to night in the poem, the author describes it through the sounds, by the activities or the things that you do. From your mother saying shh, you sleep, I mean her waking you up when you're sleeping, until the day, until the night time, you sleeping again, going back to zzz. What feelings or emotions does the poet experience when listening to the stories told by Mama at night? So you were excited, right? for the stories of your mama. What is the difference between hyperbole and personification? Okay, like I said, like we said, hyperbole, that's from the word hyper, over the top. It is exaggeration. It's telling something more than what is regular or normal. And then personification, for personification, that's when you give human qualities to things or to inanimate objects. You are making them act like, talk like, feel like humans when actually they are not. Okay, you're going to write true or false. One. Figures of speech are important for the beauty of literature. Literatures like stories or poems or songs could be boring without figures of speech. So that is one. One is true. Two, the tongue twister, she sells seashells by the seashore is an example of alliteration. Yes, that's correct. That's true. Three, how can a clam cram in a clean cream can is an example of a hyperbole. No, that is not. That is the repetition of initial consonant sound. That is alliteration, correct? Peter Piper picks a peck of pickled peppers. That is not consonants. That is alliteration still. So that is false. Five, Fuzzy Wuzzy was the bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair is an example of personification. That is, no, that is an example of Fuzzy Wuzzy. That is the sound of in fuzzy and wuzzy. And then bear, the A in hair and bear. So that's assonance. And also the the E in the consonants also. So that can never be an example of personification. So that is false. The tongue twister, Betty Butter bought some butter is an example of simile. No, there is no as or like, so that is still false. 7. Alliteration is a repetition of initial consonant sounds in neighboring words or syllables. That's correct, so that's true. 8. Hyperbole involves extreme exaggeration for emphasis or highlight or effect. So that's correct, that's true. 9. Similarly directly refers to one thing by mentioning another to suggest they are alike. That is, simile, it is not a direct comparison. This is metaphor. So that is false. 10. Personification attributes human characteristics to non-human things or abstract concepts. Abstract meaning you cannot see it. It's imaginary. You can't see it. So that's true. 11. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in neighboring words or syllables. That's true, correct. 12. Consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds, especially at the end or final part of a word. That's correct. That's true. Onomatopoeia involves the use of words that imitate the sounds that they represent. That's correct. That's true. Metaphor compares two different things using the words like or as. Now this is simile. So this is false. 15. Last number. The tongue twister Betty Butter bought some butter exemplifies onomatopoeia. Is it onomatopoeia? No, that is false. And finally, we're on the day 5 of English 5 Matatag Revised K-12 Curriculum Quarter 1, week 2, day 5. Congratulations to us. S- Still, it's still about figures of speech and sound devices. So, okay, tell the figure of speech that is used in its sentence on the space before the number. Write O if the answer is onomatopoeia, and A if the answer is alliteration. So you are going to write O for onomatopoeia, A for alliteration. We are going to choose between onomatopoeia or alliteration. Both are sound devices. There goes the familiar ding-dongs of the church bells. One, that is ding dong, that is onomatopoeia. To a space rocket zoomed to the sky. Space rocket zoomed to the sky. So you have the word zoom. The zoom is the sound that a rocket makes, so that's onomatopoeia. 3, Lucy lost her locket in the lake. The sound of L is repeated, so that's alliteration. So you have to write A or O. A for alliteration. Number 1, that's O. Number 2, that's still O. Number 3, that's A. 4, the Filipino made product is a fan favorite food. So you have there, so that is A for alliteration. 5, dry leaves crunched under my feet. So you have the word crunch. Crunch is the word that to make. So that is O for onomatopoeia. 6, in the dark of night, owls hoot in the trees. You have the word hoot. So that's O for onomatopoeia. When the rain stopped, the frogs began to croak. You have the word croak, the sound that frogs make. So that's O for onomatopoeia. 8, Betty Butter bought some butter. The sound B is repeated. So that's A for alliteration. It was a perfectly practiced performance. P, p, p. So that's alliteration. A for alliteration. 10, a brave lion growls in a jungle. Growls is the sound of a lion. So that's O for onomatopoeia. Rewrite each sentence below adding onomatopoeia. So we're going to add an onomatopoeic word, a word from a sound. The siren sounded from the ambulance. What's the sound of a siren? So that's woo, woo. That's it. The girls ate through a bag of potato chips. What's the sound when you eat chips? So crunch, crunchy. Okay, crunch. The balloon became suddenly deflated. What's the sound of a balloon? It's not a pop because that's an uh, burst. No, so that's a pop. But it's when it suddenly deflate. So it's sudden. So it's pop. Balloons pop. That's correct. The book hit the floor with a loud sound. When something falls on the floor, so that could be what? Thud. 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 She fastened herself into the dress. What could be the sound? She fastened herself into the dress. Trees. Let's have the poem. This is one of the best poems that you should, I believe, try to familiarize or even memorize. Trees by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast. A tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray. A tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair. upon whose bosom snow has lain. Who intimately lives with rain? Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. What is the central theme of the poem Trees by Joyce Kilmer? It's about the trees. How a tree is like a poem, okay? Comparing the tree to a poem or to you, to life. How does the poet describe trees in a poem? What words or phrases does he use? There are many. 3. Why do you think the poet chose to write about trees? What message is it trying to convey? Maybe because trees, just like us humans, we grow. Okay? How do trees benefit the environment and living beings? Trees give us oxygen. We would be having a hard time without trees. They supply us with food, with paper, with house, shelter actually, shade, shelter. In what ways can we contribute to conserving trees and protecting the environment based on what you've learned from the poem? So you reflect on that. Identify the examples of personification in the poem Trees. How does personification help convey the poet's message? What is the difference between a simile and a metaphor? Can you find examples of both in the poem? So again, for simile, it has the use of as or like. Metaphor, it's a direct comparison, no as or like. By the way, for personification, we are giving that tree a human-like quality. Number 8, how does the poet use imagery to describe trees? What pictures do you see in your mind when you read the poem? Find instances of alliteration or consonants in the poem. Alliteration, once again, it's the repetition of initial consonant sound, whereas consonants, it's still repetition of consonant sounds, but it has to be at the final or ending part of the word or words. Direction. For each sentence given below, write what are being compared. Example, the noise is music to his ears. What are answer? Noise is being compared to music. So you have there. Her hair is as black as the night. So what are the two things being compared? Hair and night. Hair and night are both black. The football player is a lion in the game. So you have there, football player is being compared to a lion. The kitten is as light as a feather. So the kitten is being compared to a feather. They are both light. 4, I'm so thirsty. My mouth is as dry as a desert. So yeah, there, your mouth is being compared to a desert. They are both dry. My brother is as tall as a tree. So what are being compared? Brother is being compared to tree. They are both tall. Now, in your notebook, write two sentences, one using simile and one using personification. Again, simile, the use of as or like, and then personification, it's when we give human qualities. We let things around us, animals, chairs, tables, anything, to talk, to walk, to think like humans. Circle the letter of the correct answer. There are choices. Okay. The repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of the word. What do you call that? Is it alliteration, rhymes, or assonance? The repetition of initial consonant sounds, that's called a alliteration. Two, the repetition of vowel sounds within the words, inside, middle, internal vowel sounds. Is it rhymes, alliteration, or assonance? That is C, assonance. Three, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. What example of sound device is this? Is it consonance, alliteration, assonance? What is the answer? Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. So you have there visitor, chamber, door. So that is consonants, letter A. 4. She sells seashells by the seashore is an example of what sound device? Is it rhymes, alliteration, assonance? This is an example of a tongue twister, and we know that most of the tongue twisters, they use letter B, alliteration. Clap your hands and stomp your feet are an example of rhymes, alliteration, assonance. Okay, is it rhymes, alliteration, assonance? So actually, if you, the best answer to that would be, in a way, it's not there. It should be uh, onomatopoeia because of the word clap and stomp. These are the sounds that you make. But since we have the rhymes, we are left with ABC rhymes, alliteration, or assonance. We can also see from the sentence you have a in clap, a in hands, and a in stamp. So that is repetition of middle vowel sounds. That is, best answer is letter C, assonance. Congratulations, grade 5 learners. So thank you so much. Have a good day. Don't forget to LSS. LSS means like, share, subscribe to English with Java.